Good afternoon, Cincinnati Rotarians. My name is Doug Bolton, very proud to be the president of this phenomenal club. Last week we heard from a Western Hills native, the leader of a $1 billion enterprise. This week we get to hear from a brand new to town leader of a more than $2 billion enterprise, the fifth largest employer in our region. But before we do that, our foundation gets to grant money today to three phenomenal organizations, and we are excited about them being here today and celebrating their success and their work in this community. I want to shout out to Don Keller, who is our sponsor for the day, as well as last week's sponsor, who I forgot to announce, Jane Burkhead McKeechin. Both of them have waived their opportunity to speak to our members. But again, if you are interested in being a sponsor of our meeting to promote your business or an organization that you are excited about, please see Bob Brandstatter, who's actually doing double duty today, and he's going to lead us in the national anthem. Bob?
Please join me. Let's see here. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, see, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Bob. Would you please... That's next. That's next. So you can go back to your seat. Gee, they think that maybe I hadn't done this before. So, anyway, please keep in your prayers Lydia Steck. She lost her father on August 9th. That's also almost just a few weeks away from losing her mother. So her father's funeral is August 25th in Covington. So please keep her in your prayers. But leading us in our prayer and four-way test is Pastor Todd Anderson. Pastor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Let us pray. Holy One, we are grateful for this gathering. We're mindful of the healing arts today, and all of us desire healing in our lives in varied ways. We thank you for places that offer hope and healing. We're especially mindful of persons in faraway places and nearby where there are difficulties in their life. We thank you for the Rotary clubs of the world that extend healing hands in a variety of ways. Particularly today, we think about brothers and sisters in Maui and the devastation that we've seen printed across the newspaper and our television screens. We're mindful of disaster in other places and war and famine. May we be mindful that our four-way test offers us opportunities and the means to assuage those difficulties. So bless us. For all these things we pray together as your body in this place. So let us join together in all the things that we hope, believe, and do as Rotarians. Is it the truth? Will it bear to all concerned? Will it build better will and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Pastor. You may be seated. So many of you may remember, come on up, Kelly's. Many of you remember the installation, my installation. The theme song was 50 Ways to Grow Rotary to the tune Paul Simon, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. So next week, there are 5 ways for you to help grow Rotary. Visitors and guests, we hope that you will join us. Number 1 is a breakfast, August 22nd at 8 a.m. at Fulton Yards in Norwood. Secondly, we have euchre. We have euchre Tuesday evening, 6:30 p.m. at Terracon. That's number 2. Number 3, back here at 11 a.m., we have professional development, really personal development. It's training for AED and CPR at 11 o'clock here next week. Number 4, of course, is our meeting next week. Hamilton County Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey will be recognizing her star sheriffs, and we hope that all of you will return for that very, very special event. And then number 5, Rotary After Hours, Friday, August 25th at Uda Popke's house. So make sure you use one of those 5 ways next week, or all 5 ways, actually, to help us grow Rotary by inviting your guests and visitors. Now Kelly Collison is going to introduce to us our visiting Rotarians and guests. Kelly?
Thank you, President Doug. We have a lot of beautiful guests here today. It's my honor to introduce them to you, as well as the Rotarian that has invited them. Please stand, and I know Club 17 will give you a nice warm welcome. Tina Nolman from the Caring Place, guest of Mary Brandstetter. Eric Hill has 2 guests, Samantha Miner and Dan Spatel. Michael Schatzman also has 2 guests, Julianne Dunn and Brett Stowell. I should tell you that Samantha is from Morton Steakhouse and Dan is from Hirewell, and Julianne is from the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, and Brett is from Xavier University. We have Hamza Sami from U.S. Bank, guest of Ali Hussein. Robin Parker Shabazz from UC Health, guest of Judy Pogue. And James Ruhlman, a retired gentleman. I asked him where he was from, and he said, "I'm retired." Guest of David Wiltsey. We have Jeffrey Perkins, also from UC Health, a guest of Beg McCarthy. And my guest is Sherry Steinhaus from Professional Staffing Solutions. We also have guests from Drew Emmert. We have Mary Ann, Scotty, and Annie Emmert. We have our Assistant District Governor, Frank Perez, in the house. And we also, of course, have Corey Shaw. He has 3 guests. That would be Candace Sabers, Rob Weehee, and Dr. Shad Zender from UC Health.
Thank you, Kelly, and again, welcome all of you guests. We hope that you will return with us next week at one of those 5 opportunities. And remember, Rotarians, if you are attending next week's meeting, you need to make your reservation by tomorrow at 5 p.m. And you can do all of those reservations. We would highly encourage you to do that through DACDB. All right, so Kelly introduced our visiting Rotarian, our visiting area director. So this is actually, as you know, 30,000 Rotary clubs in the world. They are broken into districts, And those districts are broken into areas. So my boss is actually Frank Perez, okay? So Frank, stand up for a second. Frank is the area director for the Cincinnati Club, the Harrison Club, the Middletown Club, and the Washington Courthouse Club. So he visits those clubs, keeps an eye on them, makes sure that I'm doing all the right things. And anyway, Frank has been a Rotarian since 2016 in the Centerville Club, lives in Springboro. He and his wife have 3 boys. His wife is a chief medical officer at Pri-Med, and Frank is retired. So he spent some years in the digital marketing business, had his own business, photography business early on. Some of you may recognize his name because I worked with him when he was at the Better Business Bureau here in Cincinnati in a membership role. Anyway, Frank, thanks for being here, and we're glad that you are serving Rotary. You are among our club area governors include Chuck Martz, Susan Wilkinson, and Melinda Kelly. All of them as well oversee different clubs in our district, really improving the work and building the work of Rotarians. Let's give Frank another applause for his work. All right, Rotarians having birthdays. I believe we have at least 4 birthdayites here. Steve Brash, Bill Froschauer, Tom Noonan, and Kay Atkins. Will you stand and let us all give you a big round of applause and big happy birthday? Awesome. One final event that is coming up. Earlier this week, there was 10 tickets. Now there may be 5 tickets left. So please, if you're interested in the September 6th Reds game, make sure that you go on to DACDB and snag those final tickets. $80 each, includes the ballpark buffet, 2 drink tickets. But again, you must grab those tickets on DACDB before they extinguish. All right. Jim Brooks, our foundation president, is going to lead us in a very special presentation of checks to our nonprofits. Jim?
Thanks, President Doug. For those of you who don't know, our Rotary Foundation of Cincinnati, our charitable arm of our club, has a lot of different missions in this community. One of which is our allocation grant programs, where we give smaller grants to nonprofits in our community tied to specific things they're doing that are similar to Rotary's mission in some way. As Doug mentioned, we're pleased to have 3 of those dynamic organizations with us today that was part of our last awards cycle earlier this spring. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce each of them to you. First up is Community Matters of Cincinnati. With us from that group today, we have Mary Delaney and Patty Lee. Community Matters has roots dating back 50 years in our Lower Price Hill community. Over that span of time, they've supported that community with education, affordable housing, a food pantry, youth leadership, and most recently, a neighborhood laundromat known as the Washing Well. To tell us a little bit more about the Washing Well is Mary Delaney.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us here, and we're very grateful for your support of our work in Lower Price Hill. The laundromat that we operate, the Washing Well, came out of a few years of conversations with our neighbors in our community in Lower Price Hill, just west of downtown here. We kept hearing over and over again this barrier to accessing laundry in our community, which isn't something that we all think about very often because a lot of times laundry is in our homes. But for our neighborhood, we're almost all renters, about 98% renters, so we're dependent on landlords to have laundry access, and in many buildings there was none. And our neighborhood's also a little isolated, so you'd have to take your laundry, in most cases, on a bus or hire a taxi to get to a laundromat. So we partnered with our neighbors several years ago in 2016 and opened the Washing Well. And every year, about 650 families come and access the laundromat. On the face of it, looks just like a wonderful, clean, beautiful laundromat, but it's also a community hub. We also provide free access to laundry for families that are having a crisis or need. And each year, it saves our families collectively over $500,000 in money that they'd have to spend just to wash their clothes. So the washing well is, we like to say it's the best laundromat in the city, so if you ever need a laundromat, pop on over. We do actually have great Google reviews, so every once in a while we get an out-of-town guest visiting from like P&G or something. But we're really grateful for your support, and we are grateful that you all have this incredible arm of your work that you reach out to charities like us in the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Our next grant recipient I'll introduce is Upspring. With us today from Upspring is Melissa Adamczyk, Katie Jensen, and Jordan Mitchell. Since 1998, Upspring has been empowering children experiencing homelessness in Greater Cincinnati by providing opportunities through education and enrichment. It's the only nonprofit in our community that focuses exclusively on the educational needs of these children. Upspring's Resource Collaborative partners with over 75 social service organizations, homeless shelters, and schools to provide a missing link of sorts that children experiencing homelessness really need to attend school. To tell us more about the Resource Collaborative is Melissa Adamczyk.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for granting us with the extra funds to help our Resource Collaborative. The Resource Collaborative is a way for us to reduce barriers to children succeeding in school. So we focus on children and families who are experiencing homelessness in the Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati area, and they can access our resources via our website. Sometimes we get people who send an email inquiring about the service. We're fortunate to have at least 75 partners. It seems like we get new ones all the time. And right now the big thing is back to school, so lots of children or schools on children's behalf or shelters on children's behalf are reaching out for backpacks, school supplies, new shoes, and uniform vouchers or some sort of clothing gift cards so that they can come to school feeling and looking like everyone else and being prepared. This past fiscal year, we reached 4,500 items of distribution through the end of July, and we still have one more month to go in this fiscal year. So we greatly appreciate it. The children loved having the brand new supplies, again, to make them feel empowered and ready for their education. So we thank you so much for your support and look forward to an ongoing relationship with the Cincinnati Rotary Club.
Melissa. Our third and final recipient for today that I'll introduce to you is ProKids. With us today from ProKids, we have Sarah Breedlove and B. Gordon. ProKids has been around since 1981 and exists because of nearly 3,500 abused and neglected children removed from their homes by the juvenile court system and placed into Hamilton County's child protection system. Their mission to recruit and train community members to become court-appointed special advocates known as CASA volunteers was one of the first programs of its kind in the nation, and today there's over 1,000 of these programs. Their Building Blocks advocacy teams address the unique needs of neglected infants and children ranging from birth to age 5. So to tell us more about that program today is Sarah Breedlove.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everybody. We are incredibly grateful for your support for ProKids. As Jim said, we are Hamilton County's CASA volunteer program, so we recruit, train, and support community members who advocate on the behalf of children in the child protection system. And the idea is that CASA volunteers are an unbiased party that are involved. They are not being paid by any entity, and they do not have parental rights by any means, so they come in and they purely advocate on behalf of what is in the best interest of the child. So that can include placement, whether that is a foster care placement, kinship placement, as well as services. And then specifically this grant will go towards our Building Blocks program, which is for children who are ages 0 through 5. This is actually the largest group of children that are in foster care in Hamilton County, and also the fastest growing. And since COVID, as you can imagine, we have seen a significant rise in abuse and neglect allegations. This most recent year was actually the highest year that we have on record. So in the county in terms of substantiated abuse and neglect allegations. So these funds will go towards supporting the training of the CASA volunteers, as well as support the CASA manager and our attorneys that work together on a team with the volunteers to advocate for the children. So again, we are just incredibly grateful. Last year we served the most children that we have in our over 40-year history, and our goal this year is to serve even more. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. Congratulations again to all of our grant recipients. Very, very well deserved, and we're proud to partner with each of you. As far as our grant program in general, keep in mind that we're always looking for worthwhile applicants that kind of marry up to Rotary's mission in some way across our community. If you're interested in referring one of those to us, the guidelines and the applications are both found on our club website. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and congratulations, Sarah, Melissa, and Mary. We greatly appreciate your work in this community. All right, get your split the pot tickets out. Today's winner gets $40. The accumulating pot is now up to $605. Today's winner is 299293. 293. 299293. All right, Mark Reckman, are you going to pick the Queen of Hearts? King of Diamonds, so sorry. So the accumulating pot continues to grow. Oh, donating it back to the foundation. Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate your work. So thanks, everybody, for participating in that. All right, our speaker today, Cory Shaw, was named president and CEO of UC Health in January. That followed a national search. Cory fills the very big shoes of Rick Lofgren, who left us in February a year ago to become the CEO at Oklahoma's Academic Health Center. UC's Academic Health Center, as I mentioned at the very beginning, a more than $2 billion enterprise, the 5th largest employer in our region. Eerily, coincidentally, essentially mirrors many of the facets of the system where Cory came from, Nebraska Medicine. Rick started a lot of things here, grew revenue by 83%. Those are some of the big shoes that Cory has to fill. Launched a $200 million expansion of the UC Health system that Cory is wrapping up. But some of the things that UC Health was not able to achieve, Cory did at Nebraska Medicine. Some healthcare quality ratings. Hopefully he'll talk a little bit about that and his vision for UC Health. Let's give a warm Rotary welcome to Cory Shaw.
So those are big shoes to fill. I actually have known Rick for 20 plus years. My background, thanks. See, I'm short. There's cue number one. Director's notes. These guys will help me out if I need a little bit more help, right? They'd help you out. So I was the CEO of the faculty group at Nebraska. I'm not a clinician. I'm a business guy that enjoys being part of a purpose that's really focused on improving the health of the communities, the regions that we work in. And so Rick and I met probably, like I said, about 20 years ago. He was the CEO at Medical College of Wisconsin, their faculty practice, and we got to know each other pretty well. And When he made the decision to leave, he called and said, hey, this is something you might want to think about. I had a few connections. There were colleagues that I worked with in Nebraska who had been here for quite a long time. Our chair of emergency medicine was a graduate of this emergency medicine residency training program, which is the #1 and longest tenured residency program in the country, training emergency medicine physicians. And it was intriguing. But I'd never been here before. And my wife and I have 2 sons who are 23 and 22, just wrapped up their college days and are rolling into adulthood. I can't call them boys anymore, I guess they're young men. So it was a good opportunity for us to start to think about what we wanted to do next. And about a year ago to this week-ish, we came over here to Cincinnati on our own, not part of the search process, just said, let's go see what the city's like. We landed on a Friday afternoon, and over the course of the next 72 hours, interacted with bartenders, Uber drivers, waitresses, hotel folks, people on the street, just talking to people. And, you know, the thing about most young people today is it's kind of cool and hip to say, wherever you're growing up, you're working hard to get away from. Like, I'm never gonna stay here. I'm getting out. And I would tell you that one of the reasons why we were so intrigued about the city was, with some exceptions, but I'd say 90% of the young people we talked to all had an amazingly optimistic outlook about the city, about the neighborhoods that they were living in, about what had happened post-pandemic, specifically about the University of Cincinnati and UC Health, and really sort of galvanized our interest. And then, you know, from that point forward, we kind of went through the process. And we couldn't have been happier and more delighted with the decision that we've made to join the city. So let me start with, and I'll give you a little bit about myself and a little bit about the organization, and we'll talk a little bit about the future, and I think that's really important. But first, let's look back. In January of 1824, there was a notice published in the Liberty Hall and Cincinnati Gazette that declared that the commercial hospital and lunatic asylum was, quote, prepared to receive idiots, lunatics, and insane persons. Here I am. That original facility was torn down in 1869 and became Cincinnati Hospital, and ultimately in 1915 was located to Burnett Avenue, and University, what is now known as University of Cincinnati Medical Center, was built. So really, 200 years of serving this city and the communities that surround it. And I can't think of a more honorable thing for what I do. I get to do every day with the colleagues, and there's a few people here who probably are growing weary of me talking about things like this, so I'm looking at them to give me the hook if I get too long. Then being part of an organization with that legacy that not only changes what's going on in this city, this region, but really has an impact nationally. And you don't have to look any further back than January of my first week here. And I joke that my first day, there were satellite trucks from every major news organization sitting out in front of UCMC, and I walked in with our public affairs folks. I said, this is a little bit too much for the new CEO, don't you think? And they quickly redirected me to Mr. Hamlin's family and him, and I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. No. All kidding aside, we were actually in Mexico on a trip with my sons, kind of their last hurrah before they jaunted off to their last semester of college, and we were with Bills and Bengals fans watching the football game. And one of the individuals I was sitting next to was a Cincinnati native, and he said, you look kind of familiar, and so I explained, yeah, you might have seen my picture in the newspaper, an announcement or something, I'm coming to town, and he, great, you're going to love it, great organization. And then about 15 minutes later, the incident occurred, and he immediately looked at me and said, he is going to the best place anybody could ever go for something like this. He's going to be fine. And of course, you know, I had a pretty good sense of the capabilities of the organization, the talent, the commitment of the individuals, but there hasn't been a more, I think, compelling statement about what our organization means, what this city can be, and frankly has become in the eyes of the rest of the nation. And one of the things that I really place a lot of weight on and truly believe is that every American world-class city shares a couple things in common. Number one, a vibrant, growing, longitudinally strong business community. a world-class university and a world-class academic health system. We've got elements of the academic health system, but we've got some work to do. But frankly, from a community standpoint, we got the other two boxes checked. And when you think about overall the healthcare in this city, there's really a lot to be proud of. The health system, it's a remarkably competitive community. I mean, there's 5 adult health systems, and if you expand the market to include Dayton, there's 7 adult health systems serving about 2.5 or 3 million people-ish. There aren't very many markets in the country with that level of competition, which makes us better. And candidly, if you look back the last decade or so, UC Health probably was falling a little bit short. And Rick, with his leadership and vision and partnership with the university, has done a great job of sort of setting the stage and moving us forward to a point where we're on the cusp, really, I think, of realizing and matching what is, I think, everyone's expectation, not only for the city, but also for the university, and I'm proud to be a part of that. I mentioned my wife. I'm a small town kid, so coming to a big city, Omaha, which is where we were at, about 1.2 million people. This is a big city. I grew up in a small town, about 4,500 people. My dad, for the first 15 years of his career, was a football coach and an English teacher. So that's afflicted me with talking in sports analogies. So you'll hear me, if you're around me enough, talking about getting 1% better every day. It's 4th down every down. We need to have a level of intensity about practicing hard. We're going to pursue perfection, knowing that we'll never achieve it, but in the process, we'll achieve excellence. That's the Vince Lombardi quote. And so, again, apologies to my colleagues. You're going to grow weary of me talking about mostly football, because I'm a football guy. I am, and this is okay, I'll disclose this. I'm a very transparent person. This is one of the things that I've kind of staked my career on. And during the search process, it was mostly virtual because of the pandemic. It was tail end of it. And I said, I got a disclosure to make, and everybody kind of leaned into the camera, and really something I want to share with you. And everyone's like kind of on the pins and needles. I said, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So you know I'm a glutton for punishment. First off, I say that I'm lunatics, idiots, and insane, and then I tell you I'm a Steelers fan. So I mentioned a little bit about Cincinnati, but why UC Health, and maybe compare and contrast. Nebraska Medicine, where I came from, we were closely aligned with the health sciences mission of the University of Nebraska, but the rest of the undergraduate mission was distant, located 50 miles away in Lincoln. And so the opportunity to be in an organization that had a very close, or an opportunity to create a close and deep alignment with the entire academic mission of the university was very intriguing to me, in addition to the things I mentioned before. If you think about health systems today, we employ everybody. We're like a small community. I have engineers, I have IT professionals, I have business experts, marketing professionals, logistics people, in addition to all the health sciences folks. And the opportunity to work with the bright and amazing minds that are populating the UC schools, whether it be DAP, the music school, music therapy is something we do with our patients, in addition to the health sciences professions, was something that's pretty compelling to me. In addition, if you look in about a 75-mile radius around the UCMC campus, you have this sort of amazing diversity, socioeconomic diversity, ethnic diversity, and the ability to impact this community is something that I think, frankly, for me was attractive. I'm all about 3 things professionally. I want to elevate health. We're going to do everything we can to eliminate social disparities, and we want to work hard to create and invigorate the economy. And if you look at the Community Health Needs Assessment for this city, which is done by the Health Collaborative, and it's inclusive of 26 counties across Southwest Ohio, Eastern Indiana, and then Northern Kentucky, those 3 things matter when it relates to the overall health status of our community. It's something that we all collectively have to lean into. We can't do it ourselves as a health system. We can't do it ourselves as the university, but we can do it in partnership with other health systems, the community organizations that were recognized here, and the work that we do day in and day out. And that's something I'm absolutely committed to personally. Here's the elephant in the room, and if you've followed it all in the news over the last year and a half, the pandemic has been cruel to all kinds of businesses, but certainly cruel to health systems. The American healthcare industry, and I'm talking now about the delivery systems, the hospitals, the physician networks, have been devastated by what happened over the last 3 years, not only economically, but also, frankly, there's some emotional damage that we're dealing with. And if you look at the impact on the healthcare workforce, we're still about 80 to 150,000, depending on which economist you believe, 1,000 jobs below, or employed individuals below what we would have expected on trend prior to the pandemic. That has driven wages. Wages earned on a weekly basis by healthcare employees is up over 25% over the last 3 years. So what that's done to our cost structure, which translates into what that means in terms of employment costs for employers who are paying for health insurance, the government, has been a tough go. Now, you also know that we don't have the ability to change our pricing. Medicare, Medicaid, the government programs tell us what we're going to get paid. We don't negotiate. And our payer relationships with United, Anthem, and others are set well in advance. So we're at the tail end of 3-year contracts with those two large health insurers. And so you can imagine what's happened with our financial performance. And I've told you I'm a transparent guy. I'm going to be honest with you. So since I've started, we've been downgraded twice. I keep telling myself at night that's not about me being the CEO. It's about sort of the trends that we're on. But there were reasons for that. And one of them was a very conscious and right decision to bring in a high number of contract nurses to open up about 100 to 150 beds at UCMC last fall. That came at roughly a cost of about $3 for every dollar we would typically invest in those nurses, but it was the right thing to do because within weeks, those beds were full of patients that needed to be at UCMC. So the challenge that we have as a health system in the short term is recovering ourselves financially, both from an income and a balance sheet standpoint. And we've made progress. We've got some work to do, but we're on our way. It's going to take us a couple years. It's going to require creativity from our team. It's thinking differently. You've probably heard some things about changes that we've made, and we're going to continue to make. But really what it's all in service of is this long-term vision. And I'll share with you kind of where I think things are going, but I'm going to start by giving you some perspective. So if you fast forward, and I think we all need to think about this in decades as opposed to years. By 2050, the world population is going to broach 10 billion people. And across the globe, about 70% of those folks are going to live in urban centers. In the United States, it's even more concentrated. We're going to end up in 35 years or so, have roughly 500 million people living in this country. And nearly 90% of them will live in urban centers like Cincinnati. And the question that I've challenged myself with, and I'm going to start challenging our team with, is this: are we ready? And it's not just about making sure that the people that live in our cities, our city here specifically, are as healthy as they can be, and that they live in healthy neighborhoods, and that they have access to education, they have access to food and security, or food and shelter, that we're ready to provide them with care when they need it. But it's also about us helping inform other cities how they can do it better. And in my mind, one of the things that distinguishes or should distinguish academic health systems is not only being responsible for caring people, sometimes on their worst day, our trauma center does that, or when they get devastating news like they've got a diagnosis of cancer that they need to be cured. But it's also thinking about what are we doing to create the healthiest city in the nation, right here in Cincinnati, and then using the learnings from that to educate not only the rest of the country, but the rest of the world. Now, that doesn't sound a lot like what you typically hear a, quote, hospital CEO talk about, but that's really where I think we should be spending our time and energy. Yes, we've got to take care of patients that are right now in our emergency departments at Westchester, in UCMC. We see about 1.5 million patients a year in our ambulatory clinics. And that's the other thing that people maybe don't appreciate is that of all of the patients we encounter and we touch on an annual basis, only 1 out of 10 actually are seen in one of our hospitals. The rest are seen across our ambulatory network, and that's really where we have the opportunity to have the greatest impact. Yes, you want us there. We want to be there when you need us acutely. But I think the biggest impact we can have as a health system, and specifically as an academic health system, is being your partner in achieving the best level of health that you can. And that requires us to think about you personally, your family, your home, your neighborhood, the schools your kids are going to. Now, we can't solve all those things, but we can certainly partner. And that's really where I see us becoming a more vibrant and visible partner in this community over the next 10 years. That's where we have to be. But we can't do it ourselves. And so my challenge to you, and then I'm going to shut up and I'll open myself up for questions, is, are you ready? Is the business that you're a part of ready? And are you ready to think not only about what's happening next week, next month, next year, but what's happening over the next 2-3 decades? Because if you look backwards and think about what Cincinnati looked like in 1990, 1980, very different city than it is today. And I would speculate that if we could look back in the retrospectoscope and have someone standing in front of Rotary talking about what's the world going to look like in 2025 here in this community, we'd have had some ideas, but we probably wouldn't have imagined all the amazing things that this city has accomplished. And I think the same is true over the next 25 to 30 years. But we ought to be intentional about it. I had a friend of mine that used to say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago or today. So let's plant a tree today and declare that we're going to make Cincinnati the healthiest city in the country and a role model for others to follow. So with that, I'll take some questions. Yes, sir. Back corner there. You're the rowdy table. I'm not sure I should take a question from you guys. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, what about loneliness, and where does that fit in the scheme? So actually, on my note, did you read my notes before I came in? One of the 4 key enablers to the healthy concept in a city, as defined by the Cincinnati or the Health Collaborative's Community Health Needs Assessment, is connectedness. The other 3 are housing and food security, education, and health access, us being able to provide you access to care when you need it. I think the pandemic amplified this, and I talk about some of the challenges. People ask me, how'd you survive the pandemic as a healthcare professional? I said, well, I felt actually pretty good in that I was able to do something about it. There would have been nothing more, I think, disconcerting to me than if I'd have been a passive participant, watching what was going on, not sure what was happening, hearing things on the TV, all kinds of mixed messages. And it exposed how important, I think, having a community and having a relationship with a close-knit group of family members, friends, whatever it is, colleagues you do business together. We've got to figure that out. And you think about what our kids are living now today, so much of their lives is done remotely, whether that's communicating via text with friends when they're in the next room, or getting on, I got boys, so on Xbox, playing Call of Duty or whatever it is. I mean, they're connected, but it's not the same as being in a room, looking somebody in the face, reading their emotions, responding to their needs, making yourself available when they're struggling, or being comfortable asking them for help when you need it. So, yeah, it's something that we have to be better at talking about. I actually take some solace in the fact that we're much more comfortable talking about mental health care issues today as a result of what we've gone through in the pandemic than we've ever been. Now, I despair a bit that we might not sustain that, or we may not make the investments as a community that we need to make sure that people are able to get access to the care that they need. But there's no question, you can't be healthy if you don't feel supported and as part of a community. Cradle Cincinnati is an organization here in this community that's dedicated to reducing Black infant mortality, which at one point Hamilton County was the worst in the country, and they've done a great job. University of Cincinnati, UC Health and Children's collaborates with several community leaders across the city to do that. The number one sort of indicator of risk is the prevalence of hypertension in African American mothers. The hypertension may be a result of diet, may be a result of their genetics, but think about the impact of insecurity around food. Is my neighborhood safe? Are my kids being cared for when they go to school? Do they have a chance to be successful? Those all contribute. And so it's all part of that fabric of thinking about how do we change the nature of the community we're in so that everybody has a chance for a healthy life. That's the bottom line. That's a great question. Right behind you.
You mentioned in your transparent opening remarks that you're a fan of that football organization that I won't mention, but they're upriver.
Yeah.
What's most important is, are you a fan of the UC Bearcats?
So the question is despite being flawed in my fandom of a professional sports team upriver from Cincinnati, how do I feel about the Bearcats? I have become a Bearcat fan, but I'm a Husker fan. Bottom line, I grew up, died in the wool, and the good news is the Huskers are supposed to come here in 2025. Now, with all the conference alignment stuff, may not happen, but I'm let's see, I think I'm 5-0 at Bearcat sporting events. 2 football games at 6-0 and 4 basketball games. So I feel pretty good about that so far. You got a follow-up question to that? Yeah, we do actually. So the question was, how much collaboration is there between UC Health and the other health systems in the city? And actually quite a bit. Despite being, we cooperate. We compete, and we also collaborate and cooperate with one another. So our Our faculty at UC Health and the UC College of Medicine do quite a bit of work over at Christ, the kidney transplant program. Our family medicine residency training program is based at Christ and up at Westchester. So that's an example. Our hepatologists, which is liver docs, work with both Tri-Health and Mercy. We provide stroke coverage, stroke on-call coverage for all the hospitals and have done it for 30 years in this city. It's actually one of the things that distinguishes what we do in this city as it relates to stroke from any other around the country. So there are plenty of examples. There should be more, though. There has to be more if we're going to be successful. I want to make sure. Anybody over here? I'll get back to you in the corner, but go ahead.
So what do you think it's going to take to have more holistic medicine or integrative health be natural?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, what's it going to take for integrative medicine or holistic health to become a more accepted part of the mainstream? Part of it's attitude among both the healthcare industry, the people who pay for it, and then providers. But we have something at UC Health, one of 9 places in the or 13 places in the country called the Osher Center, which some of you may be familiar with, which really focuses on the mind-body connection, how you eat, food is medicine. It is a gem, and one in which I think we have an opportunity to leverage really across our entire ambulatory network in terms of partnering with patients where they're at, given the situation that they're in. How can we help you become more aware of and avail yourself of the kinds of things that lead to a healthier lifestyle? It's not going to be the same in every neighborhood, but we've got to be flexible and recognize that a part of what we have to do is begin engaging with people about a conversation about what they do when they're not in our clinics or not in our hospital, but they're at home, and how can we be good partners for them. It's a challenge, but I think part of it is making a declaration. And one of the things UC Health has done is invested in this enterprise. It's really right now targeting and focused around our cancer and our neurosciences patients, but I intend to expand that across the rest of our network and make it a more robust part of our enterprise. Back in the corner there. Yeah, so the question was where are we at with respect to hospital beds per thousand is typically, and I honestly don't know the answer to that. What I do know is this, that our facilities are full. I'm not sure that that's the case at every other health system in the community, and I'm not saying that in a pejorative way, I just don't know. What I will tell you is this, that there's a balance here, because if you get into a market that's overly concentrated on the provider side and there's lots of different payers, your prices are going to go up for healthcare. If you get into an environment where there's disaggregated provider network and concentration in the payer market, which is what we have here, it creates a different dynamic, which actually adds more cost in that we're all chasing the same patient population, which means we're adding capital investment that probably isn't necessary. And so there's a honey spot. I don't know what it is. I don't think there's a place in the country that's achieved it. But I do know this. I think the amount of duplication, I'll use an example of where I came from. We integrated 3 healthcare organizations to create Nebraska Medicine. And we went from 3 CEOs, I'll just make it about me, 3 CEOs to 1. That's cost savings, and there's not a ton of value add. I think my job's important, but the reality is what I do every day doesn't mean much to what's going on in our emergency departments right now. So I think one of the things we have to understand, and another probably a better and more sizable example is every one of the health systems in the city is on the same electronic health record, Epic, which is great and that we can communicate with one another, but we all maintain our own instances. We have our own informatics teams. They're all working on the same platform, and there's really nothing competitive, or there's not a competitive advantage built into that. It should be treated like a utility, but that redundancy and that duplication has costs associated with it. So I think long term, we've got to figure out a way to be a little bit more efficient, and part of that's going to be collaborating and finding things that others do well that we can complement, and likewise. Yes, ma'am.
How are you addressing the workforce challenges to ensure that the quality of service and care is impacted?
Yeah, pipeline. So the question is really about workforce. American healthcare workers are the most frequently assaulted employee anywhere in the country. You're more likely to be assaulted when you're working in a hospital than you are anywhere else. Police officer, fireman, whatever. So making sure that we create a safe environment is really job number 1 for the folks that are working for us today. Because what happens is people think I want to be a nurse, I want to be a pharmacist, I want to be a respiratory therapist, but let's be honest, nurses are the ones that bear the brunt of that day in and day out. And they suddenly realize this is hard work, difficult work, and when we're constantly stretched in terms of finding enough staff, it makes it that much more difficult, and they look for other alternatives. So number one, we got to start by making sure that the people who've chosen to be nurses love the work environment, and that we're doing everything we can to make sure they're happy and able to do the job that they want to do. More broadly, and actually there was an announcement this last week about a $100 million investment expanding nursing workforce using investments in schools and nursing around the country, not only the 4-year degree programs, but also the 2-year degree programs, so that we can get enough technicians involved to support our nursing staff, support our physicians. It is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face, and we're going to have to think not only about workforce, but we're also going to have to think about redesigning the work itself. We're going to have to be better about using technology. Everyone wants, and I believe, everyone wants healthcare to be primarily a human experience, human beings helping other human beings. We're not doing as much as we can to use technology to take off of the plate of those human beings. Otherwise, administrivia that needs to get done in order for us to document what's happening and support the regulatory requirements that we've got. We've got to get better about that, and that's one of the challenges I think for us as an organization as we start to build a different financial level of performance. We're going to make investments in those things to ensure that our clinicians have the support they need. Number one, to do the work that they're asked to do, but number two, actually be in a position to do a good job of educating the next generation of health professionals, because most of them are in the clinical environment learning while we're delivering care to patients. And so I'd say those are a couple of things that we can do and will continue to do. I think maybe one last question. I don't want to stretch this too long. I could go all afternoon, but I won't. Go ahead.
You mentioned the importance of healthy communities. What role do you see the hospital playing in getting outside its own walls and into?
Yeah, I think so. The question was, what role do I see the hospitals playing? And I think it starts with what I said, to begin with, is that about 10% of the patients that we interact with on any given day are in one of our hospitals. The other 90% are in one of our clinics. And so I think first off, we have to lean into being a health system, which means, yes, our hospitals are there and we're taking care of patients that are acutely ill, but we need to be working in our ambulatory network to make sure that we're helping people achieve their best health they can without needing interventions with the hospital or hospitals that we operate. I think there's also then opportunities for us, and we do this today, but we need to do more of it, partnering with community organizations, neighborhoods, schools. The pathway to a healthy life is getting started off on the right foot, whether it's in pre-K or kindergarten, throughout your school, all the way through high school, and then into whatever you choose after that. And I think we have an obligation. We can't do that for the community, but we can be partners to make sure that those experiences are available, they're safe, they're accessible. And so as we start to sort of get ourselves back to the point we need to be as an organization, you'll see us making more investments in those kinds of activities going forward. It's a great question.
Cory, can I squeeze in one more question?
Yeah.
You talked about world-class cities have a great business community, a world-class university, and then a dynamic, dynamite academic health center. What are the things that our academic health center needs to do to get to that world-class level?
Yeah. So you want me to repeat that question, or did everybody heard that? You're president, I think? You good? Yeah. What do we need to do to really elevate UC Health to that world-class status? I mean, it starts with our NCI designation. There isn't another city in the country of this size that doesn't have an NCI-designated cancer center. So that was declared as a goal about 5-6 years ago. There's a lot of energy around that right now, and it's one of the reasons why I was enthusiastic about coming, because it's going to take a partnership with the community, a lot of very motivated and capable business leaders, philanthropists who are willing to support that endeavor. It does take quite a bit. I think just generally speaking, we need to be relied upon as the safest, most high quality, best experience, right cost, not the low cost, but the right cost provider in the community, and then we translate that into investments in our academic mission. The reason academic medicine is different is you'll get access to therapies sooner through clinical trials than you will anywhere else in the country. And we need to continue to grow that. We right now enroll about 3,500 to 4,000 patients a year into clinical trials where they're getting access to therapies that they can't get anywhere else here locally. And that's a role that means people stay here, more importantly, people come here from other parts of the country to get care they can't get locally. That's the hallmark of a world-class academic health system.
Awesome. Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you, Cory. So Rotary International's annual theme this year is creating hope in the world. I think our Rotary Foundation is creating hope with its gifts to really, really important organizations in our community. Clearly, Cory's organization is creating hope in our world. We want to thank you for speaking. We'll be making a donation in your honor to our End Polio Now campaign that continues to work hard. We'll also give you this small token of our appreciation, a coin with a four-way test on the back of it, and then, of course, our beautiful skyline that includes Payor Stadium and the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, Rotarians, again, thank you for everything you each do to create hope in this world. Our hands-on service committee meets immediately after this meeting, and this would not be a meeting of Rotary, Cincinnati Rotary, if I did not mention, please sign up for due days, October 26th, 27th, and 28th, 40 projects in this community that need all of your help. So if you've not signed up yet, go sign up now. Our meeting is adjourned.